Hello, everyone. My name's Jeff Kupfer. I'm the president of ConservAmerica, and we're delighted to be joined today by Shelley Moore Capito, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who is, introduce her in a second, but she is a member of our Roosevelt Conservation Caucus, which is a group that ConservAmerica supports, and also a recipient of our 2022 Congressional Leadership Award. The senator is a lifelong resident of West Virginia, elected to the House in 2000, served 7 terms, and in 2014 was elected as the first female senator from West Virginia. And in 2020 was reelected with the largest margin of victory for a Republican in West Virginia history, over 70% of the vote. She's vice chair of the Senate Republican Conference, a member of many committees, and for our purposes, most important, the ranking member of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And with that, welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for what ConservAmerica does to look for innovative solutions to keep the economy going and clean our environment and keep our environment as precious as we all know it to be. So thank you for what you're doing, and appreciate the opportunity to always work with your group. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's always great to work with you and your staff. We got a bunch of issues to talk about, so we'll get right into it. The first one we want to cover is nuclear energy. A lot going on in that area. There was a recent article that talked about the Four Corners Agreement, which presumably is members of the House and the Senate, the relevant committee members, reaching a verbal agreement on a compromise on the ADVANCE Act, which is your act in the Senate. So I don't know how specific you want to be at this time, but it would be great to kind of hear an update of where things are and tell us a little bit about that particular act.
Sure, and thanks. I think the reality of the insatiable energy demands that we're going to have over the next decades needs good, solid solutions, and I think that nuclear can be a baseload. It is now 20% of our baseload energy production, but also I think there are such great new innovations in the nuclear space that we need to modernize the way we license and regulate. We need to make sure that we're the leader of nuclear technologies all around the world, really, not just this country. And so this ADVANCE Act that we've now reached an agreement with pretty solidly with the House would help us do that, would help with the innovation, would help with maybe repurposing some brownfields like old coal mines and other places that are no longer generating the power. We have these obviously in my state of West Virginia. The state of West Virginia is interested in small modular nuclear. And in order to get these projects off the ground, we have to have a Nuclear Regulatory Commission that is fully staffed, that also is ready to, it's a different technology that we use. And so safety is the main key here. And also, I think what you're going to see is some flexibility and portability of some of the nuclear innovations that we see. I just think it's a part of a mix that we need to have, and we need to modernize, and that's what our ADVANCE Act does. So we almost had it at the end of the year. We didn't, so we're going to keep working it this year. Just anecdotally, in our committee, we had only 2 members voted against this, so it's a totally bipartisan effort here. And I think very broad-based in terms of people's philosophies on conservation or the environment or the economy or energy.
Do you see a path to getting it done this year?
I do. I think we have a path. Nothing's a clear path here in this Congress, but I think that we have a path probably on a vehicle, maybe an appropriations or an authorizing bill. Right now, I don't see it in the near future, but I do believe since the House has already moved forward on some segments of this and we've passed this out of our committee, I think we've got good momentum.
Okay, well, we'll all be looking forward and hoping that something gets done. You mentioned the NRC, and I know that you had a hearing yesterday, a nomination hearing for chair of the NRC. or do you have some concerns or something you'd like to mention about the NRC and how it
Yeah.
needs to function in this
Well,
new environment?
I think Chair Hansen has been there. I know him well. He's very open and transparent, and that's a good thing. But he's made some decisions, I think, like pulling back on licenses that had already been permitted. That's questionable because reliability and predictability in the regulatory space is so critical. So I questioned him about that. I also had some questions about the actual management of the staff and how the decisions are made. But by and large, he answered those questions. We will have a markup on his nomination in the next several weeks, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay, great. Okay, moving to another topic, which is critically important as well for the country and certainly for West Virginia and the region, is liquefied natural gas. Natural gas
Right.
in general. Shortly before the Biden administration announced the pause, a number of us at ConservAmerica had written and cautioned against doing so, didn't think it was the greatest idea. Obviously, we weren't listened to. Since that time, you've criticized the pause with some catchy phrases as Ayatollah over Appalachia and Moscow over the Marcellus Shale. So I just would be interested in what you think was the reasoning for why they did it and where you think it goes and its impacts.
Well, I'll have to admit those are pretty clever phrases. The Ayatollah over Appalachia. So, I mean, we see what's happened in Europe with the Russian natural gas. When natural gas is not being used by a rogue nation into friendly nations, you've got people in positions where they can't produce the energy, and so they're relying. Our allies are relying a lot on our liquefied natural gas. We have the technologies. We do it cleaner than anybody in the world. It does definitely impacts the state of West Virginia as we are in the Marcellus Shale. We are our region is the third largest producer in the world, and so I think that it's a lot of jobs, but it's also our own security at the same time, along with the security of our allies. I think what the Department of Energy is telling us through the secretary is don't freak out. This is just a quick pause. But, you're talking about billion-dollar projects here. When you're securing leases, when you're trying to decide and do all of the geology and other things that are in engineering that is attached with some of these large projects, the push and pull of these things is enough to make you walk away. And I think is the real danger there. Again, I'll go back to what I said originally. We're going to have an insatiable appetite for energy. If you look at data centers and other electric vehicles, et cetera, that the administration is pushing us in that direction for a more electrified economy. It's going to put a strain on our grid and other things, but we have to have the feedstock to produce the baseload energy, or we're going to have to start making difficult choices as to when and how you're going to use your power. And so anyway, that's why I think these very wrong-headed. I think it was a political decision. Absolutely. It came on the heels of the Mountain Valley Pipeline being permitted all the way through in the bill in March. And I think it was a bit of a payback to some of the other decisions the administration has made. So to listen to their environmental friends, they decided they'd hold the pause and put a pause on the LNG leases. Big mistake in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we will see how that plays out then over the course of the year. Want to turn to another area where once again I think your team came up with something which is a nice catchy title as well. The committee staff put out a report about the Biden agenda and various regulations, some of which are in the works, some of which are likely to happen in 2024 with a title called The Road to Ruin. And I know there's a number of regulations that are there. We don't necessarily need to go through all of them, but be helpful for you to give the viewers a sense of of what you think is the ultimate issue with some of the regulations,
Hmm.
and any specific ones you'd like to talk about.
Well, I think, Clean Power Plan 2.0 is coming out. All the tailpipe emissions, all the good neighbor rules, the ozone rules. I mean, it's like a cascading weight of regulation. And what we're finding in a lot of these regulations is a lot of them don't really make sense in terms of achievability of technology to be able to reach the levels at which they are wanting to go. So that's an issue. So achievability, affordability, when you start piling on this regulatory burden, the reason it's a road to ruin is it hurts the middle class. It hurts people paying their power bill. It hurts people driving back and forth to work. It hurts people in my state of West Virginia. And so I think it's the cumulative effect of all of these which are really weighty. And the other issue is the administration still keeps wanting to push the boundaries of what Congress says you're allowed to do. We saw EPA versus West Virginia decided by the Supreme Court, when basically the Supreme Court said, no, EPA, you have fully exceeded the boundaries of your legislative priority. And we see this, they're still coming back to the same trough and pushing it as far as you can. And you would ask yourself, why would you do that as an administration if you're going to get shot down in the courts? Because and here's why I think the court system moves slowly. And if these are expensive ways to retrofit and make sure that either manufacturing or other things are within the regulatory framework that's been set up, you can't just start those in a week. You have to plan. You have to make plans. And we saw this in the MATS rule. People already made their plans, and then the Supreme Court came in and said, no, it's not, it oversteps the boundaries. And so I think the administration's philosophy is, well, we're going to push everybody, make sure they get up running and going and moving. And then when that gets shot down in the court, we're going to achieve the goal that we wanted. And honestly, I don't think the right hand talks to the left hand there in terms of pushing everybody towards EVs, pushing towards this electrified economy, when you're not looking at how you're going to be able to permit anything, not just a natural gas pipeline, but a windmill or a solar farm. These are all tied together. So that's what our road to ruin is, just the weight of all these. And we've taken them down, and we've had bipartisan support in the Senate to take them down. But of course, the president's not going to sign that. And the other thing I would say quickly is the administration is now within the period of time of which they need to get their regulations out before the end of the year, before it can be as effective, before we can have a legislative tool that's effective against some of these regulations. So you're going to see a flurry of these in the next probably several days.
And you mentioned permitting. I mean, you've been a champion of permitting reform,
Right
for a long time now, and the experience on Mountain Valley Pipeline. Do you see any prospects for actually moving ahead on some permitting this year?
Well, I mean, I think that we still left some things on the table. I congratulate what we were able to get on the FRA in March, and Garrett Graves really struck a good deal, I thought. But we still have judicial review. That's the repetitive suing, sue on this, sue on that, sue on this, and then eventually sue people into pulling their dollars in deciding the project just can't go forward, because we saw that in the Atlantic Coast Pipeline in West Virginia. So I think that we're going to keep moving forward. There's also a capacity issue on transmission that's over on energy. So there are some areas that we could go directly to that would make a good impact. We're pushing Senator Carper on this and hoping that that we can strike a deal. So those are active conversations right now.
Okay. One of the new technologies, and we'll finish up on this, that's been part of the IRA, and there's been tax credits for the Treasury has been putting out the rules on, is hydrogen. And you wrote a letter in February to Secretary Yellen expressing some concern about Treasury's rules. Also, West Virginia was a recipient of the hydrogen hub. So can you talk a little bit about hydrogen,
Sure.
kind of where you see it going and what some of the concerns may be?
I, like others, think that hydrogen has great promise. I think that there are lots of different ways to produce and create hydrogen. And there's not a solid market for hydrogen yet, but there will be. It's a cleaner, emission-free power source for a lot of different things in manufacturing. So, I'm excited about that. So in the bipartisan infrastructure law, we did put in there about hydrogen hubs. Appalachia got the initial funding for with all the partners that were developed with education, private entities, and government and private citizens all joining in on this. The problem is the hydrogen hub that was created in Appalachia that we qualified for, the creation of hydrogen comes from natural gas. Well, when the IRS, which is the Biden administration, came to look at how the tax treatments was this, and that's the IRA is the tax treatment part of this, it decided that if you're going to use natural gas to produce hydrogen, you're not going to get all the advantages that if you had done this with renewable energy, which is sort of like pulling the rug out from under an arena such as ours. So I'm disappointed deeply in the administration's direction on the tax treatment, because I think it could heavily impact what actually happens in the end with our Appalachian hydrogen hub. I mean, we're moving forward, but it is an impact, and it I think originally was sold in a different way, and then they changed it midstream, and I don't think that's fair.
Okay. Well, I guess the final regulations haven't come out. Hopefully, the IRS and the Treasury will listen to some of the concerns.
I hope so.
So we covered a lot of ground. Appreciate it. You certainly have a lot on your plate, and thanks for telling us about these various issues that you've been working on.
Sure, and thank you all for everything that you do and the coalitions that you've built. I mean, it's very impactful, and I appreciate it. It's nice to talk with you, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, take care. We'll see you around. Thanks.
Bye-bye.